Hey everybody, I'm Jay Jones,
And I'm LT.
and we are the Dose Offensive Gentlemen. Now let's talk about some shit. Hey everybody, welcome back to the DOG. I, of course, am Jay Jones here with LT, and we have kind of I don't know how to say what kind of episode we have today. This is the kind of episode where we found something that connected to something else, and we have a ginormous rant about it.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
So that's pretty much how
up.
this is gonna go.
It was one thing that led to another thing to led to another thing, and
it's just the giant Charlie Fox.
now and it's funny too because you say giant rants about this, but as mentioned earlier, we definitely want to debate people or have people share their views on subjects such as this because they're kind of hot button subjects, all that. However, you've ever noticed that anytime we try to invite people to share their views after trying to disagree with us, they never want to do it. They never.
Oh yeah, they're very outspoken until you invite them to come do it on the air or just on a recording
or just put it on the record.
Yeah. Hey, because I mean that's what makes good listening is to hear two different sides of a story and come to your own conclusion.
True. And it also is the best way to get towards the truth of a matter, because there's some things that are nuanced, right? So they have varying degrees, but then there's some things that are objectively true or false, right? And the best way to do it is to discuss it and present facts and evidence on both sides so that you can determine which one, what is the closest to the truth. And you don't find that in an echo chamber. So the best way to get at that is to bring other people with differentiating or opposing viewpoints and talk it out. But I find a lot of people, today, they're saying the art of debate is dying because people don't want to debate topics anymore. They want to debate their feelings. They want to present their feelings, and they'll say, I feel this way. And therefore, if you present something that I find offensive, then you should be shut down. We don't need to talk anymore. Like I watched a debate where guy and girl were sitting down, and the dude was spitting facts, and then he's like, all right, and then I'm presenting my opinion, and he differentiated between opinions and facts. He said, these are the facts. This is my opinions based on those facts. And the girl was like, that's really offensive. And he said, why? What's offensive about it? And she's like, you know what? I just can't do this anymore. And I'm like,
it just made her feel uncomfortable.
Yeah,
because her entire notion didn't have anything to support it.
Yeah, and then she's like, and he was like, what? He's like, come on, let's talk about this. It's like, if I said something wrong, let me know. And she's like, no, I'm done. And I'm like, yeah, that's typical of what's happening today. You have people who are really to talk about something, but if they find themselves, if they are offended by something, then they just want to shut everything down. But one thing I'm not going to shut down
is Bartender Weekly.
Bartender Weekly,
where we drink.
Oh yeah,
and drink.
And I'm looking forward to this one because we are back with the Balvenie.
Yeah, it's the Balvenie, but instead of having the Doublewood 12, we have the Balvenie Caribbean Cask 14.
Ooh,
so 14. It's actually aged 14 years and then put into rum cask.
Ooh.
Right? Doesn't that sound good?
Yeah, and it's at the age of consent for Germany. And Alabama.
And Alabama. Maybe Louisiana? Definitely Mississippi.
Because what I'm about to do to this whiskey is gonna be dirty.
It is a little bit. You have a little bit on your lip there. So, according to the Balvenie distillery has been owned by the same independent family company for 5 generations. Nowhere else will you find a distillery that still grows its own barley, that still malts its own traditional floor maltings, that still has coopers to tend the cask and a coppersmith to tend the stills. From this distillery comes the Balvenie Caribbean Cask, characterized by toffee, vanilla, and a hint of fruit. So that is actually from the bottle itself. I had a little bit of tasting when I got it because I already knew I was going to get it. I just wanted to taste it, but I
have not tasted delicious. This one yet, and I am salivating, waiting.
Salivating, a little bit of drill's coming out of LT's mouth right now. So according to Master of Malt, the Balvenie Caribbean Cask bottling notes. This whiskey has been matured for 14 years in traditional oak casks before being transferred to the Caribbean rum cask to impart some extra flavor. This process has created a well-rounded and drinkable whiskey with notes of fruit and vanilla.
No toffee? It doesn't mention the
No toffee. No toffee. Well, not on this, but I'm sure we'll taste a little bit of that. So a little bit more of the tasting notes. So on the nose, the aroma is rich with notes of tropical fruits, namely passion fruit and creamy toffee. There we go. Boom. And also on the palate, sweet vanilla forms a creamy palate with notes of apples and mangoes with a hint of orange in the background, looking through the window. And also the finish. The finish lingers with a vanilla-focused character. We'll tell you some more about that. And also the overall mouth coating and fruity with superb balance. This is an excellent new release from the chops at Balvenie. So I'm pretty excited about it. And also, of course, we have the metal cubes, and which you'll hear. And if you hear those, then you should be drinking with us. Also, it is my turn to toast.
To the toast.
To the toast. I toast. May you live as long as you like and have all you like as long as you live.
Okay, so there's definitely toffee in there.
Oh, yeah, definitely so good.
Oh, that's good.
Right?
That's good stuff right there.
So like I was telling you earlier, I didn't realize how much we drink until I started throwing away bottles, and I was like, "Oh, I've had this whiskey. I've had this whiskey. I had this whiskey." Like I'm starting to tell the guy who's selling the whiskey how the whiskey tastes. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I have a podcast where we drink," and he's just like, "Sounds about right." It's like, "Oh yeah."
Well, I always tell people when they ask us about our podcast, I was like, "What do you do?" I say, "Well, first we drink and then we just talk shit." And it's like, "Oh, that's like 90% of the podcasts out there."
Yeah, except we're way better.
We're way better.
Way better.
We're so much cooler. We get it cool. We get this cool.
So cool, so cool.
Joe Rogan.
So, hey, I'm waiting to get that Rogan bump, man. Get on that top 10 of iTunes. But so a little bit of what we mentioned earlier. So this is something that we've talked about before, some of the topics of what we'll go through today, and it just kind of daisy chains from one topic to the other because they're all kind of supporting arguments to an overall ideology that we both have. And again, going back to what you said earlier, LT, we do agree on many things,
but not everything.
No, not everything, absolutely not. And
I
but there are times that I'm just trolling you.
I am the better looking of the two. That is actually
again, that is something that is hugely up for debate.
I'm just saying.
So, but we definitely invite you. Distractions. So, definitely want to encourage more participation from our listeners. If you guys have questions, different point of views, anything, any kind of feedback for us, or anything that you want to know, give us a shout, leave a comment, or better yet, ask to be on the show. We might just let you in the door.
Yeah, and I mean, I definitely welcome opposing opinions. Now, granted, I will defend my opinions, and I do defend them hard, but I expect the same. If it's an opinion worth having or is a stance you have, I think you should, I do believe you should be able to express it and offer support and stuff like that, and I do that with mine. So, yeah, I definitely encourage it. But the one thing I hate, I'm going to tell you this right now, one thing I hate when people will talk shit, like they'll hear what you say, and then talk shit about you, to other people. And then when you try to like, all right, well, why don't you talk to such and such about this? And then they're like, yeah, nah, you's a bitch in my eyes.
Yeah, I have no need to talk to him. It's just like, well, then you don't feel that strongly about your argument.
You don't feel a strong argument. And two, what does that matter? Because if you're not, like, if I express something and you were to come to me, now granted, I'm saying you don't have to talk to anybody you don't want to talk to. That's definitely, we're not saying that, but like if I express myself and then you have an opposing view that you want to express to me or talk about my view,
or if you want to, if you want to go on the record and correct your view,
then don't puss out when offered the chance. I mean, that to me that just tells me that your view is not worth it. It's of no substance to me, and it should not be taken into consideration. And you're wrong. I'm very open to have my mind change. When presented with facts and showing that I might be wrong on something, I will correct myself.
Well, that's the thing. Steven Crowder does fantastically well, I think.
I do like. So
his I love those. I love it. I recently talked to a friend who said that the change my mind was kind of a dick move, and I was like, I don't think it is. He's like, but he's trying to target these people and get their opinions. Like, he's targeting university students who will then go out and he's providing an opposing viewpoint on a controversial topic
and giving you the chance to argue
in a safe area to have an actual civil debate. He hasn't raised his voice. He hasn't called names. He has had very constructive dialogue.
And there's and for the record, I actually disagree with Crowder on several things. I actually very vehemently disagree with him on several things. But the fact that he's willing to have a dialogue on these things, and invite to the, because even if you don't, I always say sometimes too, the debate or the discussion might not be to change the other person's mind, but it might get us, the spectator, that third person, it's something to think about.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because sometimes that helps. That actually happens a lot with a lot of people. They get to listen. I mean, that's what happens with political debates all the time. People sit and they look at this and they hear what's going on from both sides, and it might sway their opinion, or sway their way of thinking. Because they might be introduced with something they didn't know before. They might be, they're introduced to facts they didn't know about. Or they're introduced to, just another viewpoint, or another way of looking at something, and it's helped a lot. It helps a lot of people.
Well, I think it's just very important to be able to have a constructive dialogue without spectators, right? Because from what I've seen, you have. Let's use universities as an example. You have people like Milo, like Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, that are, they may have right views. Jordan Peterson's independent, but they may have right-leaning views on things, or just not leftist-leaning views, and then the leftist will come out in droves to protest them.
Well, see, they're wrong, though. That's not the...
They're wrong. What I'm saying is that they're there to speak an opposing viewpoint, and instead of listening to it, they're protesting it.
So I believe in this one.
In mass, though. That's the thing. They're protesting it in mass.
If you're not on the stage, you shut the fuck up until you give it... Now, most debates I've seen and been to, they have a Q&A sessions where you can ask people, different questions. That's your time to talk. But during the debate, if you're not on stage, that's like being a heckler at a comedy show. You know what I'm saying? If you're heckling at a comedy show, no one paid to see you or hear you.
Right.
Shut the fuck up.
I agree.
All right. So when these people come out and protest because, I don't want him. I don't care if Hitler himself rose from the dead and decided to speak on a university, I would go listen to him.
I think that's why I like Milo the most, because when he gets the hecklers, it's like a comedian shutting up a heckler. Yeah. Like he just puts them on the spot, and then it's fantastic he deals with them.
And here's the thing: like, you can go and listen to someone's viewpoint, you can disagree with it vehemently. I just think that the minute you try to shut them up,
you validate what they say.
You're validating because in other people's mind, like I said, it's not always about the two people involved. It could be the spectators as well. When you have that third person, they might just come out with an opinion you don't like. What? Obviously, you're trying so hard not to hear what he says. Maybe I need to listen to more of what he says. It's the Streisand effect.
Yeah.
The Streisand effect is real. The more you try to stop people from accessing something, because I think the more you allow people to expose themselves to stuff, people generally on a whole, not at the individual level, on the whole, tend to choose things that are beneficial to society, right?
I would agree so.
So let's take Hitler's. Hitler, yes, he rose to power in Germany, but not every Germans supported him, and most of them that went along in fear. That's why you had the secret police. You had, most people don't understand, concentration camps were not just for the Jews. Concentration camps were like for atheists, some religious people that spoke out against them. There were a lot of homosexuals. There were a lot of Germans, and I know this because every year it's getting around that field trip time, and we go to concentration camps, and you start learning history, and it's like everyone thinks, oh, it's just Jews in concentration camps. Negative. There were a lot of French people. There's one that's close to here, where a lot of French people were interned that were living in Germany and stuff like that, and because they were not going along with this German thing and spoke out against it, they're like, okay, well, you're going into the camp.
Well, you know what? They should have been able to defend themselves, which is going to lead into our rants.
All right.
Dun.
So this is something that came up. This actually originally came up in 2015, but it's one of those things that keeps coming back up. And we're talking about the country of Australia and why we think reason we're talking about this, even though neither of us are Australian or living in Australia.
Did you just assume my nationality, mate?
That's a terrible.
I know, but that's what makes it so good. It's because it's terrible.
I know.
But don't ever assume my nationality.
That's oh god. All right, you're right. You know what? That was right.
I couldn't resist. I'm sorry.
No, but even though it's happening there in a land down under, I think that was even worse than yours.
That was so bad.
It's that we constantly will look at other countries and say, see, they're doing this, so we should do this too. And when they're doing something bad, or something that we think is wrong, then yeah, we're going to speak up about it. So the Australian Medical Association has been pushing a ban on combat sports for a while now. Like I said, originally the first big, where it got media attention was about 2015, and it constantly comes back. So they actually banned cages for MMA matches because they cited fighter safety, which is stupid because it's much safer. And I know personal appearance, it is much safer fighting in a cage than fighting in a ring.
Oh yeah,
trust me.
You can't fall out of a cage.
Yeah, you can't fall out of a cage. So definitely, it's much safer. And I've fought in both several times. So
they're citing safety.
Right.
You're right. So they got rid of the cages.
Well, so last year they recently they lift the ban for cages.
Okay.
So around like the summer of last year, it might be earlier, but around summer of last year they lift the ban in cages, and this was setting up the allowing the UFC to actually do an event in Australia. And so then they stepped up again, and they've been pushing to like change rules in MMA and boxing and all that stuff like that, and tighter, more stricter regulation for fighters and things of that nature. And they're citing safety. But the problem I have with this is like none of the people, or at least the people who are spokesperson that are up for or speaking out against this, none of them are fighters. None of them have done any of these activities. None of them have experienced this. They don't know enough about it, and they're not consulting people who do.
Well, that's very typical of this kind of climate right now.
Yes.
So, I mean, we've talked about this before. Definitely off air, but you have two consenting adults, right? So this may be the libertarian side of me. Like, two consenting adults should be able to do whatever they want, right? If we want to put on a cage match and you just beat each other bloody, if you're consenting to that, great, right? That's at the far end of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. However, you also have like the UFC right now, right? The UFC has a cage, has referees, has medical staff, has all this, you don't have average Joes going in there. You have guys who were trained. Mm-hmm. And I'll say this, trained just like I said in our BJJ interview with VC. It's much easier to roll and to train and to fight with someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah,
because
it's safer.
It's much safer.
It's safer to do so.
But they don't. These people that are trying to push this litigation or legislation. Sorry, they're not familiar with the current rules, which is going to be an ongoing theme in this one. They're not familiar with the current rules of the UFC or MMA, or of the culture.
Yeah, they're not. They're definitely not familiar with the culture. They're kind of they're very.
Well, they're trying to take the high road. Is really what it is.
Yeah.
We're not barbarians. We don't need to do this. It's just like, well,
yeah. I love how they're saying like, oh, it's so brutal. I'm like, no, it actually isn't.
Not really.
It's not really that brutal. No, it's. Yeah. I mean, some fights get bloody and stuff like that, but I was like, so anytime you try to regulate the aggression out of society,
It fights back.
It does.
Hard.
And it's going to fight back because I'm sorry, that is our nature. There is not going to be any time in any foreseeable history that humans will not have aggression. It's something that is innate in beings, period.
You mean humans always want conflict and war? What?
Yeah.
As a whole.
Name a decade without any conflict on the planet.
Like you
I'll wait.
You can't. There's always, throughout the entirety of the world, there has always been some kind of conflict.
Yeah. The history and humans been around for about 1 million years.
Give or take a decade.
Yeah.
1 or 2 years. It's right around 1 million, I'd say.
But there's always conflict. And I said, and right now, combat sports are like the best way to channel it because, the thing is, and it is when people who don't engage in this, the most well-behaved people I always deal with tend to be guys who are involved in combat sports, whether it's wrestling, boxing, MMA, judo, karate, and stuff like that. I said because when it comes to training in those type of sports, and to be honest, on most sports, really, but the reason that makes combat sports separate from these is because there is actually you get feedback really quickly about your
performance.
Your performance.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And it's not up to it generally not up to interpretation. Like, you could do a gymnastic floor routine and it's up to people to look and interpret it how well you did to give you a score. But when you're out there boxing and judo, look, it's
you
not
either
really
did
up.
it right or you did it wrong.
Yeah, it's really generally not up to interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, you can see real quickly how they are. Now, if they're two guys that are really closely locked, those are usually great matches because you get to see like the some peak skill from two combatants. But it's usually quite decisive. So another thing they're pushing is they're trying to make sure that they want to ban all these type of sports from kids, anyone under the age of 18.
Which is a huge no-no.
Huge
And I have so many problems with this.
Yeah.
I really do.
Well, I think this is part of the global pacification of people.
Well, it is. We've gone beyond an age where we shouldn't need violence. It's like still need to learn to fight.
There's never been an age where we're not going to need violence. I'm sorry,
yeah.
just not going to happen.
I understand their goal to be on the road to some euphoric utopia, but it's not going to happen during my decade.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen during my lifetime. It's not going to happen.
Well,
period, really.
And two, who never needs safe spaces?
Men.
Well, no, that's not true. But different reason.
I mean, tell me I'm wrong.
Generally, no.
Like men. I'm talking like Ron Swanson men, not males. You know what I'm saying?
I will. Okay, that's a different subject. But I will slightly disagree in a sense. But when I say, okay, I won't say safe space.
Okay.
I won't say safe space as it pertains to that. But you don't need the group hug, group therapy over because someone you don't like said something you didn't like. People who don't like that, people who generally don't need those safe spaces are guys that do
combat sports.
Combat sports are contact sports. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I wouldn't even say contact sports. I would say combat sports. I would because you not team oriented. I don't think team oriented would really provide that.
I would say because I'm sorry, you get rugby players and you get even American football players. They tend
and
to
like
be
hockey too, right?
In hockey, they tend to be a more tougher, sterner crowd. And I'm saying,
okay, yeah, I can see that then.
Yeah, they tend to be a tougher crowd where they know how to deal with
stressors.
With stressors a lot more, and that's one of the benefits that sports gives you, and combat sports gives you more is your ability to learn to deal with stressors.
Right.
And it's like I honestly believe that every kid who is able. And some that are differently abled. I know PC did use the PC word.
Differently abled.
Should be involved in some type of combat sport. Generally, one that will give them adequate feedback about their performance real quickly.
Right.
Whether it's wrestling in school or boxing or full contact karate, kickboxing, judo, and of course, I'm definitely going to push. Jiu-jitsu.
The jiu-jitsu.
Well, to me, judo, jiu-jitsu, boxing, sambo, we could list all those. When you have kids that do that, especially when they do that from an early age, they tend to be able to help deal with the downfalls of life a lot easier because they're used to pushing through that, because no one wakes up there. No one's born Bruce Lee. No one's born a ninja, right? So when through that training allows you to realize, one, you suck. There's one thing everybody who does combat sports knows for sure. You realize real quickly that you start off and you suck. And the way you get better is persevering. You're going to get choked. You're going to get tapped. You're going to get punched in the face. You're going to get leg kicked. You're going to get tossed. You're going to get pinned. You're going to do on and on and on. And the way you get past that is you have to get up and you keep trying. You keep going. You keep practicing. You keep training. You keep refining. You get better. And those who really start getting better and proficient in these sports, they've had to overcome a lot, to get there. And that usually translates, not 100%, but it does translate a lot over into daily life, because you don't fall to pieces the first time you're met with something negative or something that's holding you back.
Would you say that those people that have that kind of background would have a more mature mindset when it comes to real life situations?
Generally, I would say yes.
Yeah.
I would generally say
at
yes.
least just the resiliency, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just to be able to kind of go through those hardships and come out the other side. Now, some of my issues that I have with the banning of combat sports, especially with youths, right? So I am, being a new father, I am highly against someone telling me how to parent. And so essentially this invites the government to tell me what I can and cannot do. Like, essentially removes a tool from my toolbox on how I can provide tools to my kid to say, hey, we're going to go out and we're going to make you tough, right? It's not just about making your body tough. It's about making your personality tough,
mm-hmm.
and about maturity and helping you problem solve and critical thinking and emotional security. Because, hey, yeah, you got your ass kicked out there, Billy. You ready for round 2?
Yeah.
Because this is going to keep coming, right? Like what Rocky said in Rocky.
Yeah.
What was it, Rocky Balboa?
Yeah.
No. It was one of the Rockies when he's old. He's
I think, wasn't it?
It was the latest one.
Creed.
It was the latest one.
Yeah, I think you mean Creed.
Was it Creed? No, it wasn't Creed.
You sure?
Yeah, it was because when he was talking to his kid, right?
Oh, then that had been Rocky Balboa.
Yeah, it was Rocky Balboa. Yeah, and he was just like, it's not about how hard you get hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, which is completely true, right? Because nobody's going to live a perfect life.
No.
And if you have a perfect life, I'd really like to join you on your private island out in the Bahamas or Maldives or wherever you're at.
Yeah.
But so it invites government to tell you what you can and cannot do with your child, right? So it's essentially that fostering a helicopter parent mentality. Then
we know how well that works.
Oh God, it doesn't work at all, man. I remember playing out until the street lights came on. I better get my ass home. But I was given kind of carte blanche to do what I wanted. I had rules.
Yeah,
I had
you
rules.
had boundaries.
I had boundaries. I couldn't cross the street in one direction or do something, but I could do what I wanted. But it takes away a critical avenue that kids need to learn early on, and that is to stand up for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this because you see a lot of these bullying videos. This guy was bullied, and then these celebrities came to his aid and all this stuff. Well, guess what? If Billy knew how to defend himself, this wouldn't even made the news. But what happened was they celebrified it by throwing John Cena or another celebrity into the situation, and now they're giving this kid gifts. Well, guess what? Now you just rewarded a victim mentality to where now he's going to go out and seek to be a victim again because he was rewarded for that last time.
And the thing I hate about that when they do these interviews, like if you're going to teach a kid to deal with bullying, and I'm not a new father.
Jiu-jitsu.
My kids are I have an adult child and I have teenagers. And I've had to deal with this. I've had to deal with the bullies and stuff like that. And I had to teach the lessons to my girls and my boys, is that you have to learn to advocate for yourself. And that's one thing. That's one of the reasons why I put them in jiu-jitsu. I put them in kickboxing. I make them do these things because it made them learn to advocate for themselves. And everyone thinks, oh well, you got to go out and you're gonna have to fight the bully, and you got to beat the bully. And I was like, no, that's not even true. I said, I'm telling you, like, I'll tell you, growing up, not every bully I beat. There's one that got away, but
he ran really fast.
But the thing was, like, he knew from then. He's like, no, and I made it clear that if you keep going, we're gonna this. You see how we're both bloody and scratched up from this fight? It's gonna happen again. I'm not gonna stop fighting. I will continue to fight you, and one of these times I'm gonna win.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And after that fight, we fought one time.
Yeah.
And I didn't win that fight, but you know what? We never fought again, and he never messed with me again because he knew I'm gonna fight. I was like, look, it's gonna happen. He was older than me. He was bigger than me. But I was like, yeah, no, we're gonna fight again.
Yeah, I'm not the one.
Yeah, I was
I'm not gonna take this laying down.
And when you do that, you advocate for yourself, and you're able to assert yourself. You have to learn that lesson because bullying doesn't stop in school.
No. You want to talk about workplace hazing?
Yeah,
which, if done in a friendly manner, I am all for workplace hazing. By the way,
that's because we're military folks.
But still, it's a camaraderie driven. As long as nobody's hurt in the process, that's fine with me.
That's true.
I mean, if it's like, hey,
hurt.
no, that's not the kind. But as long as nobody's getting hurt.
I didn't want him to get hurt. He just got somehow magically.
All right, we're not going to go down this. We're not going to go down this segue.
Oh, we're okay. Just before anyone get out, we're out. It's over. We're not under UCMJ anymore. So.
Oh yeah.
Suck it. No.
Yeah.
No, but no. It does. It does continue in the workplace. It does continue. Like you got to deal with coworkers, and even outside the workplace, you're gonna have to deal with other people. And you're going to realize really quick, two lessons I give my kids all the time. And my oldest, who is out in the world on her own now and starting, she's starting to see this come to fruition, is that, look, one, there are assholes out there. There are people out there that are not going to like you. Yeah. Right. And number two, the majority of the people you meet on a daily basis don't give a fuck about you.
Yeah.
So it might seem harsh, but the more you learn how to deal with that, the better you're going to be. And one of those things one way to deal with that is to learn to advocate, because when you see that asshole and, they are trying to, impose on you, humiliate you, do something, when they realize you are going to advocate for yourself and you're going to stand up and you're not going to be an easy target,
they usually back off, right?
They generally back off. And sometimes they need a little bit more encouragement. That's why I teach them to choke people.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Because choking is caring.
Because choking is caring.
Now, part of my thing, and this is probably going to segue right into our other topic, is I want, and this is why I'm doing jiu-jitsu and why I want my kid to do jiu-jitsu, is because no matter what situation you're in, if you cannot handle it yourself, if you have to rely on somebody else, you've already lost.
Yeah.
Because this is a common discussion, especially with bullying victims and even anti-gun victims.
Or just in crime in general.
Yeah, just a crime victim. You should run away and tell a teacher, or you should tell the policeman. It's like, well, one, the teacher doesn't have any real authorization or any real authority to do anything. It's little Jimmy, don't pick on Bobby, right? That's pretty much it. I'll call your parents, right? But really, who gives a shit? Nobody. It doesn't stop anything.
Yeah, in this day and age, the students are telling the teachers, they're mouthing off to, like, before we used to, when I was in school, the teachers, we talked about this before. They used to be able to paddle you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I had that in my school.
Yeah.
Country school.
You had the paddle permission. My parents used to sign that shit every year. I was so mad.
And then I would get home and get my ass beat again.
Yeah. And it's like, because if someone else had to paddle you to because you're acting out, you're embarrassing the family.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to get it again when you got home.
Yeah. Well, my mom, so when I was young and I would go stay at someone's house, my mom would always call ahead. And what she would do is she would say, yeah, he can stay over. It's like, if he acts up, you have my permission to whoop him. Give me a call, and then when he comes back, I'll get him too. And so I got on both ends from, like, mothers all around the neighborhood.
Oh yeah, we used to have that. I will tell this one real quick. Rest her soul, Miss Ruby. Now, Miss Ruby was my grandmother's friend, and when I was at my grandmother's house, Miss Ruby was that lady that sat out there on the porch and she looked after everybody and all that. And then you had Miss Aussie down the street who had the freeze pops, in the corner store, and you had all that.
It's hot.
This is South Florida, and you had that community. And if one of them saw you do something, oh yeah, they'll tan your little tail. And then they, grandma would come home, they tan your tail, and then grandma would tell my parents, and then they'll tan my tail. And it was like, man, I'm catching 3 ass whoopings for one event. that's kind of unfair, but you know what it made me do? It made me act right.
Yeah.
It made me on my yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'ams, and act right in public, because you never knew. My mom used to always say, you never know who's watching.
That is absolutely right.
Yeah. But going back to the topic and why, the whole thing on, combat sports, because the thing with me also on combat sports, and I push this heavily, is that because combat sports not only teach you self-advocacy, but it teaches you self-defense. Now, I know there's some reality-based guys that are going to be like, well, it's a sport, it has rules, and you're a fucking idiot. Shut the fuck up, because every time I see some, this is my styles for the street, I'm fucking deadly,
Oh, we're not talking like Shaolin, cultural Chinese martial arts. We're talking like actual able to defend yourself martial arts.
Right.
We're talking the Tai Chi's. No, we're
Aikidos.
Yeah,
I said it. Aikido guys come at me.
Yeah,
no,
Steven Seagal.
Oh yeah, fuck that. No, but I mean, like, the real combat sports teach you, proficiency. Like, you're not going to become Jason Bourne, or you might. You never know. But you're gonna have such a great foundation of dealing with conflict, that dealing with people who don't train actually becomes a whole lot easier.
It's a breeze.
I wouldn't say a breeze all the time, but you realize really quickly, like,
that you have the upper hand in the situation.
Yeah, because I could tell you, I could say right now very confidently, and people know I'm not exaggerating. Usually, at the first engagement, I already know if I'm gonna have a chance to win this fight, if I'm gonna win this fight or not.
I would say, you mean like first engagement, like what?
The minute we start tussling, I learn really quickly.
Because I would even say before that.
You never know.
Well, you never know, but generally, and what we touched on a little while ago, is kind of the persona that the other person or that someone may exemplify, or that you see. Normally, those guys are going to be nice and chill, and they have less to prove than another guy.
I don't think I've ever got. I don't think I've ever gotten in a fight with like someone else who trained.
No,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely no, because they know. Yeah. They're just like,
well, no, I take that back.
I
tell a lie. I tell a lie. I did. My best friend in the world. He got in a fight. Me and him got in a fight because I thought he was helping I thought he was on the side of the guy that I was really having a problem with, someone who was trying to bully me, and I was fighting him. He was on the football team. The guy that became my best friend, he was also on the football team. So when he came to try to break us up, I thought he was trying to help jump in with his friend. So I fought him, and I recognized real quickly I wasn't good enough to win that fight.
But I think that was the spur of the moment thing. That's not like a building up to it.
Well,
that's more of an instinct, like, oh, I'm going to go after him now.
Yeah, but that was, and he was trying to break up the fight, and then and as I said, we became friends after that.
Yeah, because you're just like, well, I'm not gonna fight this dude again.
Well, no. I constantly try to fight him again because I wanted to see how good I was getting. That's just me. I'm like,
but not from like a hateful standpoint. You wanted like a competitive standpoint.
I wanted to see how good it
was, which I think is a completely different mentality.
Yeah. No, that became a rival mentality. That was a ruin kin sort of mentality. See which one is good. And two, plus our parents were friends too. So when they had card night, we had to go see each other. So it was like, we became friends. But no, generally on the most part, most of the times I've been in conflicts out on the street or, altercations, club and stuff like that. I knew real quickly that, one, the other person has no idea what they're doing, and the fights generally end very quickly. And to be quite honest, to toot my own horn a little, most of my MMA fights don't last long. They very rarely, like if you see most of my MMA fights, you could take my fights together and you probably won't reach 30 minutes, and that's over 10 fights.
Yeah, that's pretty good, I'd say.
Yeah, most of them they're actually really, really quick. And not because I'm the baddest dude out there. It's just that I am pretty good, but it's just that you can tell by training and stuff like that how you're gonna affect this fight and which way it's gonna go. And generally, when I'm out, the couple of fights, I haven't been in a real fight in a while. It's been actually years because I'm getting older and well, I'm older and bigger and more intimidating, I guess. That's what I generally say.
You're a giant teddy bear.
I am a teddy bear, but not. That's if you know me. People who see me in the first time are like,
Big black guy.
Big black dude. So I actually have not been in a real fight in a couple of years, but I could tell you from I will tell you my last fight I was actually in was all about 5 seconds, and it ended with a knockout. So
well,
and it was really clear from opening standpoint, and I wasn't trying to fight the guy. The only reason we got in a fight is because he tried, when I was trying to make him exit appropriately the bar, he grabbed the bottle off the bar and tried to break it over my head. And when he did that, I was just like, all right, well, there's no reasoning with this guy anymore.
And you're done.
And he's done.
So let's get back on track. So
self-defense.
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 So self-defense. You should just always have some kind of self-defense, whether it's a woman needing self-defense to fend off a potential rapist or a sexual assaulter or a mugger or anything. Like, I mean, I'm trying to go down to like why women specifically would need it. Well, because a man, I think, would need it because we experience many more conflicts than women do on an average basis.
We're the more recipients.
Exactly. But for women to know this is just, you have all kinds of women's self-defense classes.
Well, I'm actually against women's self-defense classes.
Well,
for here and let me.
But I'm saying, like, they're advocating that you should know how to defend yourself.
That's what I'm saying. The reason I hate a lot of women's self-defense classes or a way to run is that they will. So let me be very clear when it comes to self-defense, especially for women and young kids. The majority of self-defense is situational awareness. All right, that's first and foremost. Situational awareness is your number one skill you need to develop for self-defense. The physical part is actually the last resort part, but it also takes the most time to be proficient in. All right, so the problem I have with women's self-defense classes is that a lot of them will give the women an unrealistic
expectation of their attacker,
of their attacker or their skills. And I generally say I don't do women's self-defense course, even though I get invited to teach them all the time. But they're usually, so I would say with me, like the first thing I do to unnerve, just to show how to, make it a reality for women, and I've actually opened a class with this, just to let them know the reality. I said, listen, this seminar here is 2 hours. I said, I'm going to let you know, at the start of the seminar, if I wanted to rape you, I will rape you. You're not going to fight me off. At the end of the seminar, if I wanted to rape you, I'm going to rape you. You're not going to fight me off. What I'm telling you is that you're not going to leave here being able to, this alone is not going to give you the physical ability to fight off a man.
Right.
I said, so I want you guys to pay attention to that. First and foremost, I don't want you to go thinking, oh, well, I took this class and I'll be able to do this move or this trick and stuff like that, and I'll be able to take this guy out. I'm like, I'm a big dude. I'm 250 pounds.
It's an ongoing process.
You're right. It has to be an ongoing process. And like I said, situational awareness, majority of your self-defense situations, where it's going to deal with that. The physical part is the low end. Like, that's the smallest part of it, but it's also the one that takes the most time to be proficient in. And I generally encourage them to continue training, because I see this a lot where, and I've had women tell me this too. Like, they're like, oh yeah, you teach self-defense? Yeah, I took this Krav Maga seminar, and and now I feel good walking down the street. And I was like, oh really? How long you been training? Oh, I just took that one. You should be confident in that. You don't
have any. Foundation.
And that's my problem with a lot of women's self-defense classes. Not all. There are a lot of guys out there that do a very good job at teaching and being very realistic about their self-defense.
Well, I think that's because it's geared as a self-defense seminar instead of kind of a full discipline like jiu-jitsu and judo and Krav Maga.
You have a lot of people who will sell that, like, oh, come to this seminar and learn to defend yourself,
Well, yeah, and also I want you back for return seminars. So
a lot of them don't do it. That's a kind of my problem.
Or they crappy capitalist.
Yeah, or they don't offer. So like they'll fly in someone, right, and they'll do a seminar, but they don't offer any follow up. Like, I will tell people, if I'm actually flown in somewhere to do a seminar, for instance, like I went down to Paris and did one. I gave him follow up. I said, look, this requires you more training. I said, here are the places around Paris. Now, none of these places I have any ties to.
Yeah.
All right. I do know certain people here, but there's no financial ties for me. And I was like, look, these are places you should try to go to and seek further training, because you're not going to learn all that here. You know, I rep. There's a boxing club there. There's a jiu-jitsu club there. You know, there's a Krav Maga, KMG, Krav Maga Global
I
there.
think part of it is not just learning the techniques, but getting out of the mindset or getting into the mindset. Really,
mindset is really big.
Yeah, because knowing how do you say this? Knowing and feeling comfortable in a combat situation is very difficult for many people.
Yeah, because if you're especially something you're not used to, and that's another reason why I do push combat sports, even for people trying to learn self-defense, is because you actually learn to get used to being in those combat situations.
Yeah. So when you are in a fight or when you are trying to protect yourself and those you love, you are like your mind space is not a drastic change. You're just like, oh, okay, you flip a switch, and now you kind of go into tactical mode, and you're more geared. It feels more natural. Your adrenaline is not running as much. You're not panicking. You're not overthinking. It becomes so much more natural.
And this is one thing I also want to put out to the reality-based guys when they always say, well, you're going to learn, if you do combat sports, you're going to learn to fight in the rules. Look, I grew up doing combat sports. Never when I was in a fight did I ever feel that I was restricted by rules. Rules never came in. The only time rules come in my mind when doing combat sports is when the referee's telling me I can't do that. Because other than that, it's like, okay, well, you know what? When I'm out in a fight, you know, guys will say that, oh, well, in the rules, there's no tapping on the streets. You're like, you're damn right. Because
you're right, because I break your arm.
I'm not going to let you
rip your knee
go.
out.
Yeah, it's like
I choke you out. You know, it's. But that's something that we talked about with VC also is, you know, when he was talking about how the guy he was training was in a competition and he had his opponent in the triangle, but he didn't grab the leg, right? So, yeah, you failed in his eyes at that because if you were on the street, you would have been power bombed.
Yeah.
Right. And this, I think it's that mindset. Do you train to compete or do you train to survive?
So I always tell people, and I'm actually going to steal this saying from Elio Gracie a lot. No, you're not Elio Gracie. You're not even Brazilian.
I know.
But no, he said we should use, paraphrasing, it's like we should use competition to sharpen our self-defense skills, right? And what it means by that, you know, I always tell people, I said, when's the last time you got punched in the face? When's the last time you punched someone in the face? For me, it was Tuesday. Right?
Oh, that's so sweet.
So it's like, yeah, if I'm doing this constantly, I'm being hit and hitting back constantly, or I'm trying to take people down, I'm trying to choke them, I'm trying to armbar them, I'm trying to do all that. I'm doing that constantly. So when I'm faced with someone, I do flip back in that mode. And like I said, I wasn't just jiu-jitsu. I was also a combatant, a CQB instructor in the military and stuff like that. I am and I'm a war vet. So I always gear my training to self-defense or real-life situations, but I know that the impact that combat sports have and competition has in preparing us for those situations are great. So, like, for instance, Matt Larson, who is the grandfather of the Modern Army Combatives program, he likes that target. I still love you, brother. He often says, like, we're not going to win, and this is for the Army, he's like, we're not going to win the war for being the better hand-to-hand combat. We're going to win the war because of what it takes to be a better hand-to-hand combatant.
All the work and everything you put into it.
All the training, the mindset, everything that goes into making you a good hand-to-hand combat fighter is the same things that's going to carry you over when you're facing with the real situation. And a lot of, the reality-based guys don't want to talk about that, but this is not about them. I know I mention them a lot, but that's what helps. So that's why combat sports, especially for kids, is a very key thing. And it's also better to do it while they're young, because while they're young, they're not physically strong, right? They're not really super strong. They're
not going to be able to knock out the other kid.
No.
They're not going to be able to break arms and femurs and all that shit.
Yeah, not easily. And then
it's going to be a huge size disadvantage if it is, right?
Right. And so what they have to learn is they tend to learn to learn the techniques and not rely on their physical prowess. Because a lot of kids. So one of my problems I have teaching adults or older, even teenagers stuff, is that I might get a kid in he's a physical specimen, right? So he might get away, or she might get away with improper technique because they are physically strong, fast, or whatever, and they're able to apply it. And I was like, okay, well, if you apply it, I don't really talk down about it. It's like, hey, the only wrong move I always say in jiu-jitsu, the only bad move in jiu-jitsu is the one that gets you submitted. Right?
Yeah, okay.
So I'm
going to remember that next time we're training.
Hell yeah. Hey, if it gets you submitted, it was probably bad. All right.
Wait, you said that's happened. Okay, you're right. That's bad.
But if you're able to get it, like, so if you get an arm bar and you got it because you're big and strong and you're able to rip the arm off of someone defending, no technique, like give me that arm, and you get the tap, I can't really say much because you got the tap, but I'm still gonna push learning technique. Because if you want to learning the technique, being more technical is what really carries you through anything else. Now, I always say it's great to be big and strong. I am big and strong. I'm not going to knock that. It's great, but you also have to know how to run it. But it's much better to be technical. So kids tend to be more technical. And I will say this, girls tend to be more technical than boys.
I completely agree with that.
Girls tend to be more technical, but so it's usually easier teaching them that technique because they will usually take it and dissect it because they realize a lot of them, especially when they're starting in the teenage years, is that they're not going to be as strong as the boys. They're not, they're going to realize that the boys are going to be able to, like, you know what, I don't think you should have my arm now. Take it out. So they got to start being more technical. So the technique, learning them, getting that technical, having them focus on being technical when they're young is generally better because, one, it's going to help them avoid injury.
Yeah.
It's going to help and on both sides.
Proper technique avoids injury.
Yeah, on both sides. On both sides. It's going to help them avoid injury. They're not going to be, and so when they do get up and then they do start filling out and they start becoming big and strong and stuff like that, where they can actually do damage, they are going to be, one, wise to that, and they're going to be able to judge that properly. Hey, I don't need to hit this dude in the head with all my might. I know if I do this,
I know if I just choke him at these points on the neck, he'll go to sleep.
He'll go to sleep and he'll wake up refreshed.
Yeah, because choking is caring.
Exactly. So, and that's one thing. So taking that away from kids or even suggesting to do that is a terrible thing. And no one should ever, we should definitely need to pay attention to that.
Yeah. Well, my whole thing, right, is do we want our kids to be in harm's way? Absolutely not. Right? Anybody that says yes to that is an absolute idiot.
Or they may hate kids.
But then you also have the flip side of that. Do you want your kid to be prepared to take on any obstacle that's in their path? Yeah. Absolutely.
You try to prepare them as best as you can.
Absolutely.
As best as they can. And they are.
And that for the AMA, the Australian Medical Association, to say that it's not needed. Well, that's not for you to decide. Yeah. It's not for you to decide. And I'll say this: starting jiu-jitsu at any age, it's never too late.
Never. Yeah.
However, I wish I would have started when I was 10. Because
that's so much.
Because I would have developed, and this is I'm pushing all of my mishaps on to my kid, but I want to set my kid up for proper education, be able to defend herself as needed. I want to feel safe knowing that she can take care of herself outside. A bully's bullying you. Well, what'd you do? What'd you do? Oh, well, he didn't. He's like, did you choke him out? Yeah, I did. I left him on the playground. Well, good girl.
Yeah.
Good girl. Will he wake up? Yeah, okay.
I think I told you the story with my daughter, with my two daughters and the bully. So we were at on one place. This girl who was in the same grade as my oldest daughter was bullying my middle child, and she would do it. So she was scared of my oldest daughter. Right?
Yeah,
she was scared of her.
I'm scared of her too.
Good call.
Good call.
But what she would do is when they were walking home, and she would walk with her. My oldest would walk with her friends, and then my middle would walk, generally by herself or walk with her friends. And this, I will call her fat bitch, would come up
I like that name.
And harass.
It's very descriptive.
Harass my middle child. And she pushed her one time, knocked her down, and she came home crying. And I wasn't there yet, so I didn't hear anything. So, unbeknownst to me, when she got home, so my oldest came home, and She saw her sister crying, and she was like, what's wrong? So her sister told her. Unbeknownst to me, and I'm so proud of this, they hatched a plan.
Oh, a plan.
They hatched a plan.
What are we going to do today, Pinky?
So the next day, my oldest went ahead first after school, and she went and she hid. So she can see, when we lived on this long street. So once you came out to school, you went down this short street, you turned on the main street where we lived, and then it was a straight shot home.
Mm-hmm.
So she sat there and hid, and she watched. And so my middle child was walking home, as she usually do, with her friends and stuff like that. And fat bitch came out and started messing with her.
Get him.
So
Get him.
I'm gonna tell you how dumb fat bitch was. So my middle child was like, she was confronting her like, "Hey, you're gonna leave me alone. I'm letting you know, like, you need to back off, or it's gonna get bad for you, right?" And she's like, "Oh, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? Right?" So my oldest comes out and says like, "Oh, what are you doing what are you doing to my sister?" And he's like, "Oh, and she's like, "Yeah, I heard what you did yesterday, and I'm about to make sure you don't do that again." So this is the part I rolled up on.
Oh.
I'm driving home,
and you just see this on the
and
side.
I've seen this on the side of the road, and I'm seeing my oldest perform an uchimata on fat bitch, and like slam her to the ground. Like, I was driving by and I was like, "Ooh,
that's impressive."
Right? So they saw me, and I contemplated. I said, "Should I stop and say anything?"
So real quick,
Or
for the listeners, what is an uchimata?
So
just a
uchimata-
very quick explanation.
So uchimata is a judo throw, and I taught my oldest. I started her at 7 in judo. I trained. That was around the time I started doing judo. So uchimata is a throw where you're grabbing an opponent. Usually it's a arm, a sleeve, and collar tie up. But anywhere you could do a neck and elbow tie up if you want, if they're not wearing any clothes. And what you do is you break their balance forward. You're gonna turn. I always say go in my way with them, and you're gonna use the leg that's in between their leg. You sweep that up into their thigh as you're pushing and pulling, and then it causes.
So it's almost like a hip throw on steroids.
It's not really a hip throw because
right, but it's almost the same motion, right? Because you're essentially, it's not picking up, but leveraging their bodies over you and then slamming them on the ground.
Yeah, and the thing about uchimatas, and even
if she's fat bitch, I mean, damn.
Well, if you don't know how to break your fall or take the fall, you tend to people who don't know how to take falls.
I don't think she knew.
She didn't know how to do it.
She wasn't ready.
She wasn't, because I saw it and I was like, ooh, that's gonna hurt. So
you know what though? That's how bullies learn, man.
Yeah.
That's how bullies. Oh yeah, I'm not doing that anymore.
So I was like, okay, I'm not gonna. Because I wanted to stop and get out and be like, it's Dad Man. Dad Man's here. But I was like, no.
That was a great throw.
If I
just get back in the car and leave.
Yeah, if I intervene. Well, to me, I thought it's like, if I intervene now, what I'm saying, they're going to feel that they need a fallback. Like, no. Yeah. I say, well, they're not in danger.
Mm-hmm. Obviously.
Now, if I was coming by and fat bitch had my daughter on the ground and was feeding her teeth, yeah, I'd stop. I would stop.
Yeah.
And I'd drop kick her because I don't care about other people's kids. But
true story, by the way. True story.
Yeah, I'd drop kicked her. But I was like, okay, she's handling this, right? So I'm going to let them tell me what happens when I get home.
Yeah.
So I went down, I parked, and, I waited for them to come home. And so they came home and, they saw me come by and they told me the story. And I was like, okay, good. I was like, good. So I came home after watching this, and I parked, and I go in the living room, and I waited for them, and they came up to me, and they told me what happened, and I was like, okay, good, because this is exactly why I train you. This is exactly what I want you to do. One, I always teach them to look out for each other, so I was very happy that, big sister looking out at their little sister. My son wasn't in school yet. And two, they handled a physical altercation perfectly.
Yeah.
So this was really important because later that night, fat bitch's parents came to my house.
Ooh, I would love to be a fly on the wall.
It was great. Now, when fat bitch's dad came to my house, he looked angry through the peephole.
Ooh.
He stopped looking angry
when he saw you.
When I opened the door.
Oh, that's nice.
And looked angry back. And told him that I know what happened. I was like, this is what my kids were saying. And I believe them because my kids don't do this sort of thing.
Yep.
My kids don't pick on. My kids are not bullies. Your kid, fat bitch. I could tell just from the opening moments of talking to her that, yeah, she was lying out of her teeth.
Right. I was just walking home and then jumped out and ate.
And I'm like, no. And I said, first of all, my middle child isn't going to make up a story like that. She's really
especially
sweet.
When it's a recurring thing, right?
Yeah, and she's really sweet. She was at that time, that's so much have changed. At the time, she was very shy. She was very shy. She had a very small group of friends. You had to struggle to get 5 words out of her. Like I said, so much have changed. So I'm like, yeah, my daughter to come up and make up a story that you pushed her on the ground and did all this stuff and was messing with her and you know that. I was like, yeah, that's not her. She doesn't do things for attention. She tries to stay away from attention. I said, so, yeah. And he's like, well, why did you have her, why did your other daughter jump? I said, because she's looking after her baby sister. I said, how about next time you don't have your child pick on my child? And if you have a problem with this, we'll deal with that.
Oh.
And I said, so problem was solved. Problem solved, problem staying solved. But, and I that lesson is something that carried her on. So even to,
but I mean, that's so that's something that, you taught your daughters how to defend themselves, how to take care of these social stressors. Mm-hmm. That whiskey's really good. And then also to be mature enough to problem solve, critical thinking, and how to handle problems on their own, right? Because if you're not setting your child up to take care of themselves, then you're failing as a parent, I think. Now, your parent, I definitely want my child to be able to be fully independent as early as possible, to alleviate my fears, right? Because if she can do whatever she wanted without the fear of obstacles, right? She has the motivation, she has the know-how, she has the grit, the determination that she learns in these sports to push through those.
Yeah,
and that's a fantastic
thing.
So,
and I know we were going to segue to.
Yeah, we got to segue.
Well, no,
are we?
I think we're gonna. I think it's best to end it here because I think our next segue should be its own episode.
It could be. It could be.
It really could because and it's going to continue this thing with self-defense. And now, we were talking about how it affects kids, and teaching them to protect themselves and have confidence, advocate for themselves. So what we were going to transition to, and I think it's going to be really longer, is that we're going to start talking about how this is applied to adults, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the United States right now, I think one of the biggest things that we got to talk about is the use of firearms and the possession of firearms in this topic. I did read a article.
Well, I'm not even going to say use of firearms and the ownership of firearms. I'm going to say the ability and with the ability to defend yourself, period, point blank, whether it's martial art or some kind of weapon.
Yeah. And I true, and I agree with that 100%. But I think that firearms is part of that discussion.
Absolutely, but it's much broader.
It's a much broader, but I think we need to have that discussion.
And if I can't train jiu-jitsu, until I turn 18, I'm already way behind the curve because I'm an adult and I'm supposed to be able to do everything adults can do, but I'm a white belt.
Well, and that's the kind of reason. That's kind of the reason why I want to talk about this and the ability because if they're going to ban combat sports, right, and a tool that's used for people to protect themselves, and in the United States right now the gun debate is a very big hot topic situation. I mean, it is not. And to be honest, in history there has been a point where one country trying to subjugate another population, they told them they could not practice martial arts. They couldn't practice any form of combat because.
And that's tyranny.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, because that's what happened shortly after, right?
Yep.
Like a form of tyranny came over, and the populace did not know how to defend themselves against the intruders.
They couldn't defend. What they did is that when they tried to subjugate them, they banned weapons, they banned any practice of martial arts, and I mean of any form of combat or anything they can see because a population that is not only armed and able to defend themselves is not going to be subjugated.
Absolutely.
Right? How do you oppress a bunch of armed people? You don't.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah.
All right. But that's another topic, so I think it's good to cut it off right now, and we'll pick this up in the next episode.
Yeah. So stay tuned. See ya.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Dose of Offensive Gentlemen podcast. We want to hear what you got to say, so leave us a comment below and hit that like button. Also, subscribe so you can get your future DOG updates.